So far this year, we've deployed officers to 110 events. So at least a tenfold increase over previous time.
Winnipeg police are seeing a massive increase in the number of protests and demonstrations that they have to attend, and police leadership say it's putting some pressure on frontline staff.
So when our response involves the deployment of officers, there are implications on both budget and operations, clearly.
Dave Delal, Superintendent Uniform Operations, says officers are no longer responding to a handful of events a year, but dozens, with a good portion focusing around the pandemic.
Over the last 2 years, 40% have been kind of anti-mask, anti-vax type of protests, but we have the full range of issues that we attend.
There is a crowd management unit for events that present some risk of violence, but officials say it would not be financially feasible or necessary to deploy the unit to every event. As a result, it's usually community support officers who attend.
Our community support unit officers, who are generally our proactive members, our community problem solvers, they need to be redirected in order to help ensure that these protests are carried out in a safe and efficient way. And so when they are redirected to monitor these protests and marches, that takes them away from their prime duties.
Police say response to these types of events also go beyond the day of the event, as officers try to connect with organizers in the days ahead and do an analysis on the response. Police Chief Denny Smythe says they are currently examining how best to handle the increase in protests moving forward as a service, and says while people have a right to protest, he condemned those who feel it's okay to target medical facilities.
I'm not a big fan of anyone protesting someone that might be going to a hospital for medical care. I've always been supportive of people's right to protest. That's one of our foundations in the country here. I've heard others talk on this. Often places like City Hall or the Ledge, those may be more appropriate. We've certainly had our share of protests at police headquarters, but an emergency department of a hospital, you could put other people in jeopardy, and that's just not right.
Marcus Chambers, chair of the Winnipeg Police Board, says he feels hospitals are essentially off limits.
Let's put things in perspective. I mean, those individuals that are attending a hospital are doing so because of an illness or visiting a family member. They're not there making policy. If you want to protest, I mean, there's Broadway, there's Main Street to hold those protests, there's the human rights grounds to hold those protests. But our hospital, I think, is a little bit out of bounds in terms of hosting those types of protests there.
The Winnipeg Police Board chair says he would support police if they chose to remove the demonstrators.
I think it would even go further. I would encourage people to look at other venues to host those protests. And if they're being disrespectful or if they're being aggressive, yes, police are well within their rights to remove them from those situations.
Police leadership say anytime they attend an event, the response is analyzed and evaluated. They say it's the nature of the event that determines the level of police presence, and say with everyone online and on social media, the ability to host and organize an event is easier than ever before. In Winnipeg, Morgan Majeski, City News.